Today I'm going to chat through my 5 kind of favourite plastic-free sustainable spots within the kitchen. This is probably generalised. I could talk about more which are in different categories. Thought I'd do the 5 that kind of make the most difference that I've seen in the kitchen. So to start with, I don't know if I'd class it as my favourite. And probably maybe the most useful is the stainless steel lunchboxes. So I've got 3 different brands that I use in 3 different sizes, but they're really helpful both kind of from a shopping perspective as well as storage. So my bigger lunchboxes, which are from Elephant Box, A Slice of Green, so they're the ones I've had the longest. I actually use them for going to the butchers. So my local butchers, I built up the courage probably after pandemic if they were happy for me to bring my own containers, and they said yes. So any kind of meat they will put straight into my metal tins. So it's a bit like at a refill shop, they tear the weight of the metal container or lunchbox and then they add it in, nice and easy. Take it home. They work obviously in the fridge or the freezer, depending on how you want to store things. And then simply you take the meat out, take the food out. I sometimes get pies that I put into there as well from the butchers, and literally wash it up. So you've got no plastic storage, don't have that kind of awful smell of when you have the plastic containers in the bin from food. So you literally clean it up. They stack really well in my larger unit until I then need to reuse them again. They're really helpful from that point of view. And with the bigger sizes, you can actually get quite a lot in. So it's great if you kind of bulk cook meals like I do. My kind of smaller size from Moo, they're great. I would probably say as lunchboxes because they come with a little divider in, so you can split up what you put in them if you're using them for lunches. I also like to prep food into them, so meals. So my favourite probably that I utilise them for are like lasagnas or enchiladas. So you can prep them up, portion them into the lunchboxes, allow them to cool, pop the lid on, and then I put them in the freezer. They're then a ready meal. I get them out night before, pop them into the fridge. By the time I come home from work, I can literally take the lid off and then put it straight into the oven. So I don't even need to take it out, put it into another dish. I can literally cook it, eat from it even from the lunchbox. So it's a really good way of kind of reducing plastic where you're storing food, but also washing up. You literally prep it, cook it, eat it all from the same container. It's great. They do 2 sizes, which again depends on how much or what you want to meal prep into them. They're great use for that. Being on the line of storage, kind of another favourite is silicone food pouches or bags, depending on how you want to look at them. I have mine from Moo. I have bought some for myself as presents. I've also kind of been gifted some as well from them in the past, and they're so versatile. They do lots of different sizes, so I've got small little ones which are great for kind of snacks, so granola bars, energy balls, potentially pushing up crisps if you get crisps from the refill shop, or sweets for road trips or theatre trips. That's probably what I've been using my smaller ones for the most recently. And then they've got big ones that go up to ones that have almost like a standing base as well. So those ones I tend to use for either storing baked things like scones, rolls, breadsticks. I make gristinis for my lunch sometimes, in the freezer and then take them out. My Pop-Tarts, if I make them for breakfast as well, I wrap them in some compostable baking paper and then pop them into the big bags and keep those in the freezer. The other way I then do it, and it's probably cookies, which I use the most for this, is if I make up a batch but don't want to cook them all off as once. My cookie recipes tend to do about 16, unless I'm taking them into work to share. Obviously 16 is quite a lot just for me and my partner to enjoy. So I will chill them in baking dish in the fridge as I do within my recipe. I then pop them unbaked into I think they're classed, they're extra large silicone food bags, and then pop them in the freezer. That way then if I'm cooking off something meal wise in the evening and want a sweet treat, I can literally take 1 or 2 balls, depending on how many cookies I need to bake off, literally give them a couple more minutes in the oven, and then I have freshly baked cookies without having to get the KitchenAid mixer on the go again. A baker, I obviously do lots of baking, so swapping to silicone baking mats have been really useful. I do sometimes use compostable baking sheets or paper as well, depending on what I'm doing, but silicone baking mats are probably one of my easiest changes that make a huge difference from a waste point of view, especially if you bake as much as me, and baking from scratch helps reduce waste and plastic in other ways. So I definitely recommend increasing up your baking if you can. Now with silicone baking mats, there's lots of different styles or designs I should say, depending on the brand that you get. I've got my most well used one is an Eco Living one. That was the one I got first, and then I've been gifted as presents at like Christmas some as well, which are different colours, so I sometimes colour code what I use to bake them with. But you simply pop them on a baking sheet in a roasting tin as well. If you want to do savoury like veg, chips, pies, I'll pop on them so they don't stick to the baking tray. Take them out, wash them, dry them, they're done. You then store them, get them out again when you need to, so it can help reduce cleaning, especially if you're doing like savoury foods and roasting bits. It helps protect the tins and reduce having how much you have to scrub with those. It comes off the silicone baking mats so much easier. Wooden utensils are a really nice way to reduce the plastic consumption through the cooking process themselves. So using plastic ones, you obviously, when you're scraping things, microplastics can come off. You can also release stuff from pots, pans that you're cooking with if they're not stainless steel, so that's something to consider as well. But wooden utensils kind of range from wooden spoons for baking all the way through to more spatula style ones. I've got some like flat slicers, I don't know if that's what you'd call them as, for like stirring casseroles, bolognese, bits like that I cook, so I tend to use them for. And they're really, you can find them kind of most places, whether you're looking for more budget options or if you want to invest in like bamboo ones. You can easily come across lots of different styles. They're really easy to look after as well. So to give them a refresh, you simply boil them in water. I dry them off and let them air dry, ideally outside if you can on a really sunny day, and then using some food safe beeswax, pop it on, let it sit, and then you buff them off. And then you give them a really good refresh. You've given them some extra protection, and that obviously helps you keep them, use them for longer, which then kind of saves you long term without having to replace them as often. I do the same thing with my wooden chopping boards, same thing, boil them, dry, food safe beeswax, and then buff them off, and then you're giving them protection as well. So the last sustainable kind of swap that I want to give a shout out in this video to are glass jars. Simple things. I'm probably talking more along the kind of clip jar storage. I have quite big ones because of what I use, but in theory any type of glass is great and can have so many uses. My big clip top jars I use for storing my baking ingredients within my pantry, so things like flours, sugars, chocolate chips, but things like nuts, mini meringue pieces, dried fruit. Literally you can store anything in them, and obviously because they come in so many different sizes, depending on what the item is and how often you use it, you can get a size to allow you to have as much as you need or as much as you will use to hand when you want it. From a safety point of view, I tend to use other containers and then decant them in them when I get home from the refill shop, just because I don't want to break my jars more than anything. But some people I do see actually take their big Kilner jars with them to refill shops. So that might be, depending on how brave you are, whether you take them. I do take smaller, like more pasta size jars for refilling and then transfer them. So it depends on how brave you are. So that's one way you can use them. Another way is storing, obviously, baked goods. So granola is something I tend to use them a lot. They're really good to gift in jars. Again, I've done little small ones for my team at work at Christmas, to big jars for my sister for like her birthday or Christmas present as well. So really good for like granola, cookies, depending on the size of your cookies. Big jars, you can fill them up, you can see what's in them, you know when you need to replenish them then. Another way that glass jars can be used is for kind of meal prep, food prep as well. So probably the most common thing you'll have seen people use them for are like overnight oats. Them up, put them in the fridge, they're ready in the morning. People will use them for salads, take them to work, layer them up, and then literally stir through or add dressing to them when you're ready to eat them. Soups you can store in them. Stock, depending on if you haven't got a glass bottle, you can store kind of homemade veggie stock that you use up with waste over peelings and bits to make. Something else that you can do in the big ones, you can prep off making your own vanilla extract. So it is a bit of a long process, but if, like me, you use it a lot, you can bulk it up. So pick the size jar of how much you want, put your vanilla beans in them, your pods, then you add in your alcohol. So probably most people use vodka, but you could do like a bourbon or a rum as well. Literally pop it in the cupboard, so you do it up, pop it in the cupboard, leave it for a good kind of 4 to 6 months, and then you've got your homemade vanilla extract. So they can be good from that point of view. Gin as well, homemade gin. My sister's partner, mum, have made gin before, and they're really good. Or even my sister, to be fair, last year she made a rum actually. You can store them up in there, shake them up, and then obviously decant them. So glass jars, regardless of what size, regardless whether you've bought them purposely for storage or if you're reusing jars from sauces, jams, bits that you've bought and they're empty, glass jars should be a staple in any kitchen that is looking to reduce their plastic waste. I hope that these suggestions have been useful. Some of them obviously are a bit of an outline to start with, things like silicone pouches, the metal lunchboxes, but I would almost see them as a case of when the time comes that you need to replace something, but actually potentially be a bit more conscious with what you're then replacing it with. So potentially more at that point, choose a bit more of a sustainable option if you can. It then tends to last longer and it saves you money in the long run. It's also good for the environment, but also from your health when you want to think about what you're eating and storing your food in as you're then obviously digesting it. So if any of these products are of interest to you, I will link down below kind of brands that I've used, so ones that I recommend. So if you are interested or want to do some investigating of your own into them, please do give them a look. Some of them will link through to kind of shops in general that do lots of plastic free swaps, so not just kind of focusing on the kitchen. So you might find actually there's some other items elsewhere that you would like to try as well.